Okay, good afternoon. Hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. We are picking back up in Matthew chapter 9. We're reaching a bit of a transition now. We just had spent some time with Jesus doing some miracles, um, different things happening, and now we're transitioning into another portion of the narrative. And so that's where we're going to pick up here in Matthew 9, verse 35. And we're going to take it through chapter 10, verse 4. So we are actually moving along. We're getting into the double-digit chapters now. So we might be done by the time of the second coming, but we'll see. And Jesus went through all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease and every affliction. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest and to send out laborers into his harvest." And then he called to him his 12 disciples, and he gave them authority over unclean spirits, to cast them out, and to heal every disease and every affliction. The names of the 12 apostles are these: first, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee and his brother John, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax collector, James the son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus, Simon the zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. So, this is a transition. Um, Pretty much verse 35 is wrapping up what we were just reading with the miracles and Jesus going from town to town and doing these great and wonderful works. So here we go. Matthew transitions into this new period of the ministry where we have Jesus basically extending a call to 12 of his disciples as he's going about doing the things that he's been doing. We can think of this as just a continuation of what we were reading. That as he's doing all this, he's noticing something that is happening. Uh, Matthew describes it as he sees these crowds as being harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd, which is probably an indication of what is going on at the time. And it leads him to act in compassion, and that compassion leads into a couple of things. One, it leads into a prayer, and then it leads to a commissioning. So, pardon me. Yeah, we all seem to be sounding great today. And we're being introduced into what this compassion of Jesus produces. And so this is our transition from Jesus, I guess you could say, being a one-man show to starting to spread out and bring in other people. This isn't to say that Jesus really needs the help, but the people need help. And so he is asking that there be harvesters to come, and this is the answer. So we have two parts to this transition. The first part of the narrative is the narrative of Jesus' compassion. He's looking out. He sees the people appearing in a certain way. Now, Matthew doesn't really expand on why the people are looking downtrodden, why they're looking harassed and like sheep without a shepherd. Not really certain where this is going, partly because, well, there's not a whole lot of contextual evidence to suggest which way to go with this. It is most likely, just with where Matthew's been going so far, that he is emphasizing the compassion of Jesus in this passage. He might be considering this as Matthew and his propensity for alluding to and referencing the Old Testament, that he might be drawing a link with Micah 5:1, that Jesus is the ruler who will indeed shepherd my people Israel. So that there could be some of that going on here. Um, what it is, we can't say too much. So I would urge not reading too deeply into this, but recognize that Jesus is having compassion on these people who are just lost. Um, they don't know where to turn, and so it could be also a bit of a response to what has just started occurring in the previous sections that we were reading, and that was the opposition to Jesus's ministry. So there could be some of that going on here. But anyhow, we have Jesus. He's been doing all these great works. He's seen these crowds. He's seen the state of these crowds, and he's having compassion upon them. Uh, as Pastor Harrison of the Missouri Synod, the president, as he would say, particularly in his book Christ Have Mercy, he's splanchnizing these people. His guts are being ripped out on behalf of these people. Now we talk about having our heart ripped out. The center of emotions in first century thought wasn't the heart; it was actually the gut. You know, we talk about getting butterflies in our stomach, and that's about the extent of our locating emotions with the gut. But uh, for whatever reason, we've transferred it to the heart. But anyhow, that's neither here nor there. I'm getting off on a bit of a tangent there. Uh, but he's having compassion on these people, and this compassion leads him to ask all of his disciples to pray that the Father would send workers into the harvest field, that uh, the harvest is ready, but there's nobody to work the fields. So, I mean, there's a sense of urgency to Jesus' statement that you don't want it to all go to waste. And so basically he comes along and he's going, okay, guys, you know, pray, and this is what you're to pray for. One thing I want to point out is at this point he's talking to all of his disciples, and these are just, and disciples does not necessarily mean the 12 at this point. And the reason I have to say this is within the passage that we're reading, there is a differentiation where he starts out with, he calls together all of his disciples and tells them to pray, and then right after that he calls together his 12 disciples. And so Jesus is telling a bunch of people to start praying that that God would send people into work the fields for they're ready to be harvested. And so this is a bunch of people that Jesus is asking. This isn't just the 12 that are going to be named here in a few moments. And likelihood, part of this is a response to what Jesus has been seeing with the leadership in Israel. The people who should have been shepherding the people to Jesus, bringing them to Jesus, are actively working against Jesus and what he's doing. We just, not too long before this section, have the Pharisees saying he casts out demons the prince of demons. In fact, that's actually verse 34. So I had to double check where I was at. And so with this kind of opposition from the people who should know better, the leadership has left the people that Jesus is ministering to without the shepherds that were needed, the workers that are needed. They're basically they're not doing their job. They are failing at what they're supposed to be doing. They're so busy worrying about their own self-important righteousness that they're forgetting that the role of spiritual leadership is to actually point to the righteous one, not to themselves. And they're actively working against this by claiming that the righteous one is actually the unrighteous one. So this is bad stuff. And if this is and since this is likely what Jesus is responding to, it's no wonder the people who he's seeing are harassed and downtrodden, because these men who they respect are telling them that Jesus is in league with demons, uh, but that's not lining up with the things that they're hearing from Jesus. That it's not really lining up with the compassionate actions that Jesus is doing, and so they're completely lost. They're out to sea with a broken rudder. And Jesus sees us, recognizes it, and goes, okay, it's time to replace the workers. These workers, they're not doing their job. They're actively working against me. So it is time for us to go to the Father, pray out of compassion for these people that workers would be sent into the field who would do their job. And so this is what Jesus asks them to do. And his words convey an extreme sense of urgency. So it's reasonable to expect they started praying right there. People growing up in an agricultural region recognize that when the crops are ready, and you got to get them in quick or they're going to be ruined. So with him saying that the harvest is ready, they're hearing it's got to be done quick or it's going to be ruined, and we're going to lose crops. We don't want to lose crops, because lost crops are mouths not fed, and that's not good. So they start praying. In all likelihood, it doesn't actually go into detail if they were praying or whatnot, but honestly, how can we expect them not to pray when Jesus is telling them to go ahead, pray, pray that the Father would send people out into the harvest. And then immediately he calls 12 of his disciples to him and gives them authority. He gives them authority to cast out demons. He's given them authority to heal diseases and every affliction. And so we can honestly, we honestly just cannot look at this and not say, here's God the Father's answer. The Father's answer is to call these 12 men and send them out. So that is what is going on here. The 12 apostles, they are God's answer, God the Father's answer to the prayer of sending out workers into the harvest field. And pardon me, these 12, they're given special authority, as I was mentioning. There is basically an extension of Jesus's ministry. What has he been doing the last couple of chapters? He's been going about, he's been casting out demons, he's been healing the sick, he's been taking care of every kind of affliction. And so he's charging these 12 apostles with this ministry. Now, one of the things I want to point out is within this text, we have a change of language within Matthew's discourse. When he starts out chapter 10, he refers to them as 12 disciples. By the time we finish with this, he is calling them the 12 apostles. He has separated these men out. They are given a unique calling. This is not a calling that is given to everybody. So if you're one of those folks who's reading those and saying, "Oh yeah, there should be healings and casting out of demons and whatnot, and that's going to be the mark of ministry," you're missing the point. This is a specific call. This is a call given specifically to these 12 apostles. It's not a generalized thing. This isn't given to all the disciples. We cannot say that this is given to all the disciples, particularly with the change in language that we see within Matthew's discourse. They start out as disciples and they are sent out as apostles. So this is a unique office. This is not an office that's given to every person. It's not an authority given to everybody. So, word to the wise, if you see somebody trying to justify the works that they're doing by pointing to this passage, yeah, don't listen to them, because it's now obvious they don't even know what Jesus is saying here. But anyhow, so what is an apostle? I want to touch on this really quick because it is a unique office. And so apostle it actually comes from a Greek word apostolos. I know I mispronounced it, which is the noun form of apostello. And if you're thinking that's all Greek to you, that's right, it's Greek. But anyhow, apostello means to send out, to send forth. And so apostolon is one who is sent. It is a person given special authority, a delegate. They're sent out to represent the one who sends them. So the apostolon are ones who are specially designated by Jesus to go out and be an extension of his ministry. They are being sent out to do exactly what the spiritual leadership of the nation of Israel is not doing. They are being sent out to show compassion and to point the people back to Jesus. And they're given the exact same thing to preach, we'll see here in a bit, as that John the Baptizer was given, to repent that the reign of heaven is standing near, which is also what Jesus has been preaching, which I still find quite ironic because the reign of heaven is standing in the person of Jesus. But so we have these 12 guys, they're given special authority that is unique to them, and they're told to go out. They're sent. And that brings us to our next section, Matthew 10:5 through 15. These 12 Jesus sent out, instructing them, "Go nowhere among the Gentiles, and enter no town of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, and proclaim as you go, saying, the reign of heaven is at hand. heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse lepers, cast out demons. Pardon me. You received without paying, give without pay, acquire no gold, nor silver, nor copper for your belts, no bag for your journey, nor 2 tunics, nor sandals, nor a staff, for the laborer deserves his food. And whatever town or village you enter, find out who is worthy in it and stay there until you depart. As you enter a house, greet it. And if the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you. And if anyone will not receive you or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet when you leave that house or town. Truly I say to you, it will be more bearable on the day of judgment for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah than for that town. Now, Jesus is sending them out. He's telling them what to go and do. And as he's sending them out, he is raising some questions. Why only to the Israelites? Why was he sending them out only to them? And we have to ask this question because we've already witnessed within these chapters that Jesus has had compassion on Gentiles and has recognized Gentile believers. So why is he so concerned that the apostles would only concentrate on the regions where the Israelites are at? It's a question we've got to ask because it doesn't fit with what's already happening. And it doesn't quite mesh with what we're going to see when Jesus gives them the commission after the resurrection, where he tells them to go to all nations. Why is he telling them to concentrate on the people of Israel?
Non-believers.
Non-believers?
Still waiting for his coming.
What was it?
Still waiting for his coming.
Still waiting for his coming. So you're saying the Israelites were still waiting for his coming. There could be something of that to this. Um, one of the things that that it could be helpful in understanding this is remembering that Matthew tends to be a little bit forward-looking. With as much time as he spends in the Old Testament, he does spend a lot of time anticipating things that are to come. And this is where I'm going to go with it, that Jesus has already established a sense of urgency. Now there's the immediately apparent urgency of the people who are completely they're shepherdless. They need somebody to shepherd them to Jesus. There is that also, but carrying on with his illustration of a harvest. Big reason that you want to get your harvest in quickly is so that different things that occur naturally, like a rain or something, doesn't cause harm to your harvest. Also, what's the bane of every farmer out there? Bugs coming along and diseases coming along and destroying crops. I have to wonder, when Jesus is telling his disciples to concentrate on Israel, if he doesn't have in mind the fact that in about 40 years, the nation of Israel is going to cease to exist. the physical nation that is located right there on the Mediterranean is going to cease to exist. Because in 40 years, the Roman uh, armies are going to descend on that nation and scatter the people to the four winds. Remember, in 70 AD, there, right around that time, a rebellion is going to arise in the Jerusalem area, uh, and Rome does not take kindly to rebellions. They come in and they just demolish the region. I mean, the temple. I mean, all that's left is that little tiny section that they call the Wailing Wall today. And even then, that's like one of the outer walls. It's not the temple itself. So um, we, I have to wonder if the his admonishment here to just go to the people of Israel is because he knows the time's limited, and before they are sent to the four corners of the earth, he wants to make sure that they hear the message that has already been prophesied to them and that they have somebody pointing them to Jesus, which is something that we all actually need. So I wonder when he's doing this, it's not because he's being uh, ethnocentric or whatever, however you want to put it. It's because he knows the time for this nation, this physical nation, it's short. I mean, it can be measured within the span of one generation. So, with that kind of urgency, he's like, okay, guys, concentrate on this because this group, they need it now because they're going to get wiped out here in a bit, and we want to make sure they get it now. So, it's priorities, folks. When you got a deadline like 70 AD, you got to prioritize a bit. Because I'll be honest, just as Jesus didn't avoid Gentiles when they came upon him, I have serious doubts that as the apostles were going out and doing their thing, that they didn't come across Gentiles in their ministry. And I seriously doubt these guys would not be following the lead of Jesus and doing stuff for these Gentiles. They wouldn't be going off to their towns by no means. They would be doing that, but I, Jesus was doing the same thing. He wasn't going to their towns, but he he didn't hesitate to help them when they crossed his path. So I would expect, though it doesn't say that word for word in the text, that they would have done the same thing. That was their example to follow. So and when you're in doubt, what do you tend to do? You follow the examples you know, and the example they knew is what Jesus has been doing. So they probably just do what Jesus was doing. Besides, that was what they were commissioned to do, to go and do what Jesus is doing. So, um, so that is what is happening at this point. Um, 12 men have been selected out to gather together uh, the true Israel, the lost sheep, out of this nation that is also called Israel. So, and all of this starts with his compassion. So, really, this transition is again emphasizing the compassion of Jesus upon those who are lost, and it is going to take us into a longer discourse that is part of the commissioning discourse, we'll say, of the apostles. Um, I don't want to compare it to the sermons of call day because I can remember how impious I was on my call day, and if any other pastors are listening to this, they're probably thinking of how impious they were. Um, but there is a bit of a correlation there where you get these last minute instructions, and so Jesus as he's commissioning his disciples, is also giving them instructions and also telling them some things to expect. So that's where we're going to pick up next week. Until then, blessings. We're getting into the season of Advent, and we are going to continue through Advent. Uh, I don't have to worry about midday services, so um, I can continue the Bible study, and I want to continue the Bible study. We've already had enough breaks as it is with things, and we're taking enough time that I want to keep us moving, and so we will be here next week. Until then, blessings.